to that. Very, tricky area, because you may have a lack of capacity to deal with other things and still technically have the capacity to manage your own money. It's just across a whole spectrum. And when it comes to money, I would share with you, and this is really a later slide, that money is more than dollars and cents. There are whole theories out there now, and whole bank of consultants, especially when you get to more affluent wealth advisors, and I've met a lot of people who won't represent anyone unless they don't have 25 million. That's probably why they didn't talk to me for very long. This is an excellent book, Facilitating Financial Health. And one of the authors is a CFP who I met in Rapid City, South Dakota, has a very extensive website, is nationally known, Rich Kaler. He partners, as a lot of the cutting edge financial planners now do, with mental health professionals. So if you get bored with working in the EAP sector, the next career opportunity is partnering with a certified financial planner. And I'm only being partially facetious. What they're talking about is money tapes, money scripts, that kind of transactional analysis kind of stuff, but we all have them. And it really invades the province of decision-making across that continuum of care and services. Mindsets, depression-era mindsets. I don't have the money. I can't afford to leave the house. I can't get this care. That's imprudent. That's wasteful. I got to leave the money for the kids. And the kids could care less about getting the money. That's part of the disconnect. So I would just share with you that there's a growing expertise about the psychodynamics of money and financial planning. And daunting about how complex it is, but at least there are even resources that specific for helping people look at money from a more holistic perspective. Housing and care options we talked about. Again, that's obviously one of the fundamental issues, regardless of where you are on the spectrum of affluence. Family dynamics, I think that's probably one of the more challenging aspects of being an EAP or any consultant who wants to do an intervention, yet is only dealing with maybe a fraction of the stakeholders in the relationship. You may be dealing with the senior yourself. You may be dealing with the caregiver child. You may be dealing with the sibling of the primary caregiver child who's 1,000 miles away. And so you're only seeing a portion of the dynamics. And I know you know that, and I'm just emphasizing it, that in this arena, that's, to me, part of the real complexity of your role. And also then the mixed hats you're wearing versus being engaged in a partner with the employer versus your role relative to the employee, which Chris talked about from an ethics standpoint a few meetings ago. And we haven't even touched upon the whole arena of legal, financial, and medical considerations. And it would take a long time to get into that. And the issues are many, and they're all moving targets. How many of you had to read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance in college? Only us old guys. The cover on mine is blue, by the way. That was one of the first books ever published that did different colored book covers. It's funny what you remember. The one thing I really remember about that is it was about a father-son journey, metaphorically and in real life. And I remember the saying about it's the sides of the mountain that make up the top. And that's how I feel about dealing effectively in navigating the aging maze. It's a process, and you have to honor the process. It's so desirable to get it off your do list or try and deal with it in a day or one session or one meeting with mom and dad. If I asked you to take the time to visualize your own life experience, some Sunday, more than last week, last month, could have been 10 years ago, a lifetime ago, when your family had the legacy planning talk, if at all. I'd be surprised if these issues got buttoned up in one afternoon after Thanksgiving dinner or whatever. It's a very drawn-out process, and that's a good thing. And that's contrary to how we are structured as a society anymore. In fact, there's a whole movement afoot now called slow thinking. And for obvious reasons, I'm a devotee of that new genre of thinking. Think tortoise, not hare. We don't do that so much anymore. How much time do we get, really, in our lives to ponder, to reflect, to stew, to evaluate multiple options? Are there not often so many pressures on us personally and professionally? Quick, solve problems, kick this out, get this off our do list. And at what expense? Well, we only need to read the business journals to see at what expense in corporate America. You only need to watch the news any given evening to see the cost of a lack of reflection and pondering on governmental decision making. So I just invite a contrast to a Malcolm Gladwell Blink, which I love Malcolm Gladwell, and I love that book about the snapshots we take instinctually in areas of expertise and also in our personal lives. We judge people by their appearance in what, a fraction of a second. We often make hiring decisions on just intuition. So much of business is decided that way. And sometimes it's very sound because it's a gut sense, an intuition that's really a collection of many years of experience. And a lot of times it's right on. I'm not saying don't follow instincts, but in complex areas like this, it's okay. And I'm inviting you as advocates to suggest to your clients or managers you're talking to say, there's no one answer. This may take some time, and that's okay. It's all right if you're slow. No, don't say that. Because there are so many worse alternatives to taking your time, to digesting, to get the input of stakeholders. One NASA critic calls it group idiocy. That was in the report, as you can imagine, slamming the disastrous explosion. It was groupthink, group dysfunctional think. And that happens in corporate America a lot. And that happens in families too. Mom's a problem, you gotta get her into a facility, boom, 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 let's go. This one's down the street, let's all jump on board. Let's gang up on mom, and that's our action plan, okay? May or may not be an example of group idiocy. I'm just pointing out that theory. And regrettably, a lot of times the default decision-making that happens with seniors because of the lack of legacy planning is who's giving them the advice and when is this happening. It's a social worker who doesn't know the family meeting with them in a room in the hospital after a hospitalization. So mom fell, fractured a hip, for whatever reason, hospital won't discharge back home, and suddenly everyone's scrambling like chickens with their head cut off. And their relationship isn't with a long-standing, mentor, or someone like Pam, or someone like me, or their long-standing financial planner. Didn't see many of them walking into the facility I ran. Families often felt bereft and alone. And what gets trampled in that process? Often autonomy, the true wishes of the parent. They're in a position of powerlessness. They're in a hospital post-hip fracture, drugged up. Say, sorry, mom. No, I'm exaggerating.